Hi, everyone. Welcome to St. Louis County Library's virtual program, Read One, Craft One. So before we get started, there we go. Before we get started, I'd like to orient you to some of the features of our Zoom environment. So tonight's program is in a webinar format. So that means that your camera and microphone are not active. So though you can see and hear us, we can't see and hear you. No one can see you, so you can just kick back and relax and hear about some really great books and some crafting resources. We will have a Q&A, a question and answer session towards the end of the presentation. So if you can hold your questions until then, at that point, we will enable the chat function. And that looks like the little speech bubble with the word chat underneath it. You can click on that icon and a box will open where you can enter your questions. Those questions will just go to the presenters and we'll answer as many of them as we have time for at the end of the presentation. I've also enabled the live transcription closed captioning. So yeah, if you want to see the captions or hide them or change their font size, you can do that using the live transcript CC menu in your icon bar. Okay, so tonight's presenters are myself. I'm Sarah S. At Adult Services. I'm also joined by Sarah J. from Adult Services. So there's two Sarahs tonight. And then Peggy from the Saks branch and Sherry also from the Saks branch. We are going to be talking about some winter reads as well as some craft resources that are available here at the library. We're going to be going like back and forth. So Peggy and I will be talking about some winter reads that we think that you would like to read while or listen to while you're crafting. And Sarah J and Sherry will be talking about a few craft books as well as some other resources and initiatives related to crafting at the library. So that's sort of the order that it will go. I did send out a handout. If you signed up before, say, like 1-ish today, you probably got an email from me with the handout attached. In that handout, if you click on the covers, it will take you to our catalog so that you can place a hold or check it out. Mine and Peggy's all go to the e-audio format specifically of the book because we thought that it might be nice for you to be able to listen while you're knitting or crocheting. But all of our titles are also available in print. So if you did want to check them out and place a hold on them to read them in print, you can do that in our regular library catalog by just doing a quick title search. And then of course, Sarah J and Sherry's craft books are available in print only because it would be pretty hard to follow an audiobook version of a crochet book. So that's kind of how it'll work tonight. So I'm the one that's going to go ahead and get us started. So my first pick is The Wishing Thread by Lisa Van Allen. And I wanted to have at least one pick tonight that was related to the fiber arts. So this one is it. So when their aunt dies and leaves the fate of the family yarn shop to the three Van Ripper sisters, they're sort of forced to overcome their estrangement and their differing feelings about the long-standing family belief that their knitting is a form of magic. The Stitchery, which is the name of their yarn shop, has not only sold yarn, but has also sold spells that are knit into hats and scarves and blankets to help their neighbors. The sisters have to learn to work together again if they hope to save the Stitchery, both from a greedy developer as well as the possibility that the knitting magic is sort of dying out. Woven into the story are New England area legends about Rip Van Winkle and Sleepy Hollow. So if you like cozy, enchanting fiction that involves knitting and love, both romantic and familial, and a little bit of magic, then this one is for you. Okay, so my next pick is The Final Revival of Opal and Nev by Donnie Walton. And as I said, all of my and Peggy's picks are available in audio, so you can listen to them while you knit or crochet. But this one is one that I absolutely recommend the audio over the print. This is a fictional, like, oral history of a 1970s proto-punk rock duo called Opal and Nev. Opal is a Black woman from Detroit, and she's like the main singer of the group. And Nev is this white guy from England who is the guitarist, and they write songs together. And the narrator is Sunny. She is a music journalist whose deceased father was part of the backing band for Opal and Nev, and he had an affair with Opal. So Sunny's been contracted to interview Opal and Nev before they have this big reunion tour. But also, of course, she wants to get to the bottom of what happened at this fateful concert that sort of launched the fame of Opal and Nev, but also ended in a race riot that led to her father's death. So there's a lot of drama in here. And the audiobook version of this is recorded with a full cast. So it very much sounds like you're listening to an episode of like VH1's Behind the Music. Like it sounds like an actual documentary. It's really hard to remember that this is all fictional because it feels so real. Her writing is just amazing. I mean, it feels really like a real rock band. So definitely try this one out if you would like to read about 70s, like the 70s era, pop music history, post-civil rights movement America, and definitely listen to it if you like well-produced audiobooks. This has been my favorite book that I've read in 2022 so far, so this is the one I'm going to judge all others by this year. Okay, next I have Wintering by Catherine May. We promised you some winter reads, and this one plays on the idea of wintering in the sense of being in a certain place or condition during the winter months. In this case, in sort of like an emotional way. So this memoir by Catherine May is about her attempt to get through a very difficult time in her life, not by trying to overcome it, but by leaning into it and using it as an opportunity to like hunker down and prepare to start anew. So she kind of went through this 6-month period in which her husband had acute appendicitis and her young son, her 10-year-old son, had to drop out of school, had to leave school for homeschooling because of bullying issues and anxiety. And she also had to leave her job as a university lecturer because of severe digestion issues and stomach pain. And she decides the best way to move forward is to understand that life goes in cycles, just like the seasons. And we have to go through like winters, you know, that are harsh and cold and sometimes painful, but are also an opportunity to like prepare to start over. So this book came out in November of 2020, and the pandemic actually hit while May was writing it. And she discusses how she had to rework what she had already written because it became clear that like we were entering kind of a global period of wintering. I think we can really see everywhere how many people have come through this pandemic with some new ideas about like what they want in life and what they value. So I highly recommend this slim but like really emotionally impactful memoir if you or someone you love is going through a time of wintering. Okay, next up I have Empire of Wild by Sherry Dimeline. We often associate horror stories with fall because of Halloween, but traditionally winter was a time for scary stories that were like told in the darkness while huddling around the hearth or a candle. And in this book, the main character, Joan, is a Canadian Métis woman or someone of mixed Indigenous and European ancestry. And she's been searching for her husband for almost a year, even as other people have assumed he's dead. He's been missing for about 11 months. She does find him eventually serving as a preacher in a revival tent in a Walmart parking lot. But when she confronts him, he doesn't recognize her and he acts really strangely. And he claims to be the Reverend Eugene Wolfe, which is not his name. So she and her 12-year-old nephew set out to find out what happened to him, eventually coming to believe a theory of a local Métis elder that he's a rogaroo, which is like this werewolf-like creature. So this novel is a bit more edgy than my other picks tonight, and it does include some sex and violence, but if you want to find out what is lurking in the dark Canadian winter, then try out this book, which expertly mixes First Nations legends with modern suspense. Okay, so next I have Overground Railroad by Candace Taylor. And if you want like the ultimate in multitasking, you can keep both your hands and your mind busy by listening to some nonfiction while you craft. This fascinating history book details the development of the Green Book, which was a travel guide used by Black motorists between 1936 and 1966 to find lodging, restaurants, and gas stations that they could safely use, given segregation laws and widespread racism. So this was really the height of the Great American Road Trip, and both lower fuel efficiency and speed limits meant that people had to stop a lot more frequently than we do today. And this could be really dangerous for Black motorists, especially in the Jim Crow South, but really anywhere where they were kind of an out of town stranger, So this ingenious guide, the Green Book, helped people find comfort and safety on the road. And Taylor tells not only the stories of travelers who use the guide, but also of those who bravely listed their businesses, both Black and white business-owned businesses, often in defiance of local laws. So this is like a really inspiring and fascinating read about a historical object that was heavily used in the past, but is little known by the general public today. So if you want to learn something new, try this one out. And then my last pick, A Psalm for the Wild Bill by Becky Chambers. This is my pick for like a one skein, 1 day sort of project. At just 4 hours and 8 minutes of runtime, you could listen to this audiobook in one afternoon crafting session. I know that cozy and enchanting and hopeful are not words that are often associated with science fiction, but that is how I would describe Chambers' Monk and Robot series, the first of which is this book, A Psalm for the Wild Bill. It takes place in a post-industrial age in which humans have kind of found balance with nature, and they confine most of their habitat and farming and technology to a fraction of the earth, leaving all of the rest of it wild. Meanwhile, after reaching consciousness, the robots left humanity kind of to their own devices to live in this wilderness centuries before the book begins. And the book centers on Dex, who is a tea monk or someone with a vocation to travel from town to town and listen to people's concerns and worries and make them tea. It's all very cozy. Yeah, seeking even more solitude and a natural existence than they have, Dex defies the rules and travels into the wilderness, eventually meeting a robot named Mosscap, who is fulfilling the robot's ancient promise to check back in with humans and find out what they need. So the result of their meeting is like a lyrical reflection on need and vocation and purpose. If you like a more hopeful take on the future and you're in the mood to read about both robots and tea, then this lovely, short and sweet novel will satisfy you, probably all in just like one sitting. So that's it for me. Next up, we have Sarah J to talk about some crafting resources. Take it away, Sarah.
Thank you, Sarah. I don't get to say that too often. My to be read pile just got much longer. Thank you so much for those picks. And thank you for asking me to be a part of this program. So as some of you may know, I've been facilitating month-long arts and crafts programs for the past year for our library community, beginning with a crochet sampler last January. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that when I get to other resources. But I wanted to just kind of set the stage because I am fairly new to needlecraft. And because of that, I really appreciate books like this one that featured here, the Crochet Book, because as someone who is a novice, so to speak, books like this are extremely helpful because they include not only instructions on the various stitches, so like a kind of a stitch dictionary, but also techniques and like how to stitch from the front of a on the front side of things, and it's a whole thing, as well as the care of crocheted items. So things that you don't necessarily think about when you're coming into something that's new. You don't know how to block items, for example, that kind of thing. So this book does cover those aspects of crocheting, and it has a lot of helpful terminology because if you have dabbled in crochet and or another kind of craft, you know that the patterns assume that you know what they're referring to. So this book has a lot of great references for the terminology that we might need to know, like the basic stitches, but in the symbols and abbreviations you might run into. And so there are a lot of helpful resources like that. But what I like about books like this are that they also include a number of patterns that can fit almost any occasion, any skill level. And for someone like me, I tend to like shorter projects. I used to, part of the reason why I didn't crochet for a very, very long time in my life was because I always thought I had to make a blanket. This has lots of smaller things like a coaster set, or I made hand warmers for my child last year from the pattern in this book. They also have things like amigurumi. I hope I said that right because I usually butcher it, but they're really adorable little plushies, that patterns. And so there is literally something for everyone, in a really easy to use, clear design. And so I keep coming back to this book in particular as the year has gone on, when I'm looking for something new. Another month-long challenge that we've completed, it leads into my next book, is an embroidery sample. So this January, we as a library community, we participated in creating a sampler, and I had never done any embroidery before this past month, and I have loved it. And one of the things that kept me from trying it before was the feeling that embroidery might be too restrictive and, to be honest, too boring for me, like because I had like some cross stitching experience when I was young and it was so kind of controlled and there was a certain, definitely right way to do things, that I kind of bristled and against. And so this book, Boho Embroidery, Modern Projects from Traditional Stitches, um, really is something that inspires a crafter like me who likes things to be a little more freewheeling. And so as I did this project this past month, I learned that I really responded to the kinds of things that are in this book. This one does a great job of introducing readers to the tools of the trade, the kinds of needles that are out there, maybe how to kind of experiment with those things, types of thread, which can be really overwhelming when maybe the only thing you've ever been familiar with are DMC embroidery flosses. So it's really, it does a really lovely job of explaining what the differences are among those threads and where you might find them out in the world. So making life a little easier there as well. But it talks to you about hoops, as well as embellishing hoops, but scissors, marking tools, adhesives, things that make life easy when you're embroidering. This includes a stitch dictionary, complete with references to more comprehensive stitching guides, but each demonstrated stitch is accompanied by really colorful examples and very clear examples as well, that have tips about where to also use those stitches. So not only here's this cool stitch, but this is a great one for borders, or this is a great one for filling in. So things that are really helpful, again, to someone who is relatively new or maybe exploring different kinds of approaches to embroidery. There's an extensive discussion as well about fabrics and working with color in those fabrics, as well as working with a hoop versus not using one. So you really get a full range of things in a fairly thin book. So the publisher of the Crochet Book, they also have an embroidery book that's DK Publishing, that I like as well. But I like that this one approaches it in a different way, and it's a little more brief, a little more digestible, and with all these really inspiring photographs of different projects and approaches. I liked that the author challenges to think about what visually inspires us and how we can incorporate those things into our embroidery projects. So it helped me to kind of push back on what my excuse me, what my predisposed my predetermined ideas of embroidery were, and the various things that one can do visually, artistically with embroidery. And I'll get to my favorite resource here in a moment. I have one last title to share with you from the print collection, and that is the One Skein Crochet, de-stash beautifully one skein at a time. And Sarah mentioned her last pick, which I'm going to butcher the title, but this is, you might want to listen to that while you work on one of the projects from this book. I don't tend to buy a lot of skeins of yarn in any one color. I get a little nervous about ending up with too much. So as a result, I have lots of, kind of random samples. If I have a big project, I'll buy a bunch of things, but I'll buy what I need for it. But as a rule, I end up with, the clearance skeins, that sort of thing. So this is a great book to help you kind of manage and clear out some of those odds and ends that we might have in our yarn stash. So this book offers beautiful patterns that are a little more delicate than maybe, at least in the yarns that are used, than I might drift towards, but I have friends who do beautiful work with those kinds of patterns. But it also, again, has really helpful information that I always wonder, like, okay, I'm looking at this pattern over here that has used this much yarn, this weight, and this many yards. And so I'm looking at what I've got and like, how do I figure this out? Or I've got this odd, ball or end of a skein that I don't have the information for anymore. So I probably threw away the wrapper. Um, and how do I know what to do with it? Well, this book does explain how you can measure both in length and also in weight, measure your yarn to determine what you have. The importance of having the correct gauge, because I know I used to be one of those people who's like, it doesn't matter. Uh, and it doesn't matter if I have 4 inches of this many stitches or what fits in that. I just kind of wing it. And so, but you can't, that definitely backfires on you. So this explains why, and how to predict whether you have enough yarn left of a particular color or weight or whatever to do what you want to do with it. It also walks us through how to design our own motifs, which I really enjoy. Again, I'm kind of a freewheeling crafter. I like some freedom. I like being able to create some things on my own. And I find this really appealing because as a beginner, I think having the opportunity to work with stitches you like and try different things can help teach you a lot about what works and what doesn't, and what kinds of stitches are good for various kinds of projects. So I like that it gives you the tools to kind of play around with those things and see what you can do. But if you'd rather follow a pattern that someone's created, there are plenty of great patterns here for different yarn weights, such as hand warmers, hats, a beautiful purse, and so many scarves that have so many different approaches that you get a good deal of variety among the patterns. So I really recommend taking a look at the one skein crochet so that if you have some things that you want to clear out, you've got plenty of options there. But I mentioned a few times that we had a crochet sampler last winter, and we just finished are finishing the embroidery challenge this month, and those are all from a library resource called Creative Bug. Again, some of you may know me from the programs that we've been doing this past year that use Creative Bug as a jumping off point. And so if you're not familiar, I do want to share with you my hands down favorite resource that we have besides the books on our shelves and our wonderful electronic collection. So Creative Bug is an e-course, and that means that it's a series of tutorials and classes that you can access online. They're self-directed, so you don't have to wait necessarily for a class to start. You don't have to finish it in a certain amount of time. It's there for you as you want, and are able to complete any of the classes that you like. There are month-long projects that are daily practices, and there are also quick tutorials that you can whip out in an afternoon or even shorter sometimes. And these things are all taught by professionals, design professionals in all kinds of art forms. So not only fiber arts, but also in painting and drawing. And there's people who do leather work. There are all kinds of things happening in the Creative Bug world that are beautifully presented and clearly presented to us, so it makes life a lot easier. And therefore, also all the classes are for all skill levels too. So there's something for the beginners. There's all the way through advanced skill levels. So those are just some of the reasons why I love it. There's also an online community. Not only I try to create a community for us, but also for if you wanted to just interact with other people using Creative Bug across the country or wherever, there's a way to participate with folks there on Creative Bug too. The best part is that Creative Bug is free to all St. Louis Library card. Oh, no, sorry, St. Louis County Library. There we go. St. Louis County Library users. And you just need to have your library card number and PIN in order to be able to access it. You have to navigate there through the link that Sarah's got on this slide. And in order to have the opportunity to put in your library card number and PIN, but that's how you get it for free. And so if you ever get asked to use, to pay for anything, you know that you've made a misstep. So you can always check in with us about how to get your free access. If you're not a St. Louis County Library resident, you are card holder rather, you can check for your local library. They may have access. St. Louis Public Library does, Jefferson County Library does, St. Charles, a lot of the municipal libraries as well. So plenty of opportunities locally to access it. They have some of my favorite projects are the crochet sampler taught by Twinkie Chan. It was fantastic. It came with a PDF with the instructions for each stitch in that instance. And I didn't necessarily watch every video tutorial over the course of the month that we did this challenge last year. Often the written instructions were enough, but for other stitches like the herringbone stitch, if you're familiar, that was rough. And so being able to reference the video was really helpful. And that was definitely completing that sample after several failed blocks was a highlight of 2021, is one of the big successes. But again, you can jump into, because it's self-directed and it is laid out kind of day to day on these longer projects, you can jump in and out and find the stitches that are new to you or stitches that you want to give another try at or want to see how this instructor handles them. So there's a lot of flexibility to get what's useful to you out of it. Or if you want to go from start to finish, you have that option too. The embroidery instructor, I can't say enough about how wonderful the embroidery sampler was that I just completed. And she has a beginning, intermediate, and advanced offering. She just started offering another sampler. Her name is Rebecca Ringquist, and all of her tutorials are very clear and very encouraging and very relaxed. I think that's the one thing that I do appreciate most about Creative Bug and all of their offerings is that they really stress that it's about participating and giving a try to these different techniques and different media and just spending some time doing the things rather than trying to achieve perfection or worry about whether you've got it just right, whether you have the exact correct materials, that it's more about just doing and taking the time to relax into these things and be adventurous. It definitely has helped me to be more adventurous about the things that I try. In the past year, we've explored not only crafts of all kinds, but painting, drawing, and lettering as well. And we will continue to do so as a community going forward. But it's there for you anytime you're interested in checking it out. If you have questions, it's like the briefest, most condensed presentation about the service that I've given. So if you have questions, feel free to ask at the end of the program or shoot me an email. I'll be sharing my email at the end in the chat. So please don't hesitate to ask questions about accessing Creative Bug or for recommendations for tutorials. All right, so that's it for me. I'm going to pass it over to Peggy.
All right, hopefully you all can see me. Winston Brown is a small town police officer living in the Florida Panhandle in the 1950s. In the beginning of the book, he learns he has lung cancer. He allows himself to wallow in self-pity for a day or two, and then he decides he will live his life to the fullest. Winston already was a Little League coach, delivered groceries to shut-ins, and was kind to all. After his diagnosis, he helps protect a little girl who has escaped from a cult, helps a young teenager out of poverty, and also finds a little romance. I like this story because it transports you to a simpler time when life moves slower. when tomato aspic was served at church socials, when town locals turned up for Little League games, when you enjoyed a glass of Ovaltine, and when people smoked cigarettes all through living and dying. The story includes a lot of banter between the characters. The townies love the New York Dodgers and specifically Jackie Robinson. The Dodgers, who, by the way, win the World Series in 1955. I enjoyed listening to this leisurely paced, character-driven story on an audiobook read by the author. I would call this a feel-good story. Think Andy Griffith. And next up, Fanny Flagg is a beloved Magic Game panelist and the author of the well-known book, Fried Green Tomatoes at the Whistle Stop Cafe. The Wonder Boy of Whistle Stop is a sequel to Fried Green Tomatoes. The story shifts back and forth in time and over and across multiple characters' perspectives. The main character, the Wonder Boy, is Bud Threadgood. Bud loses an arm at the end of Fried Green Tomatoes in a train accident. In this book, he overcomes this handicap to become a high school football star and a successful veterinarian. He is called Wonder Boy, not because of his accomplishments, but because his Aunt Nitty explains he's always a wondering about something or another. Bud grows up, moves away, and sadly, the railroad yards start to shut down and Whistle Stop becomes a ghost town. Nothing is left but boarded up buildings and memories of a happier day. Then one day, Bud decides to take a last trip just to see where his beloved Whistle Stop used to be. In doing so, he discovers new friends, new surprises about his Aunt Iggy's life, and more about Ninny Threadgood, Evelyn Couch, and other beloved Flagg characters you met in Fried Green Tomatoes. I enjoyed this heartwarming and homespun tale. Fanny Flagg, in an interview with WAMC Public Radio, said what inspired her to write this book. And I'm going to paraphrase this. There is so much upset in the country with politics and people being mad at each other. I wanted to go back in time when people were pulling together and it was more civil. We forget that there's so many nice people in the world. All right, and my next pick was Muzzled by David Rosenfeld. Alex Vogel was on a rented yacht with two colleagues planning a new corporation when two thugs show up with guns and shoot his friends. He abandons ship and then boom, the boat explodes. Vogel goes into hiding, fearing for his life, but he really wants his dog. So he contacts the dog rescue center where his doggie is being cared for and asks for her back. The people at the dog rescue center figure out who he is. And when he arrives to pick up his dog, he is greeted by the police who arrest him and accuse him of the murder of his two colleagues. Present at the scene is lawyer and dog lover Andy Carpenter. Vogel asks Carpenter to represent him, and Carpenter says yes, even though he wants to retire because he can't turn down a fellow dog lover. This is just the beginning of the book. Now it's up to Carpenter to figure out who is after Vogel and who killed his two colleagues. Is it the mob, the Russians, Vogel's new mysterious girlfriend, or could it be someone from his old company? You'll have to read this engaging and suspenseful book to solve the puzzle. I want to add, I absolutely loved the author's sense of humor. The character Andy Carpenter is a total smart aleck, and he's lovable. He's sarcastic, self-deprecating, and frequently obnoxious. This book is number 21 in the Andy Carpenter series, and I'd like to listen to more of it because I think Andy Carpenter is a riot. All right, for my next book, I listened to this audiobook. I thought it would be kind of fun and timely to read a book about Betty White. I found Here We Go again on Hoopla and imagined my delight when Betty's voice came on to read her own memoir. Here We Go Again was published in 1995. Betty grew up in Beverly Hills. Her early career started in radio, and by 1949, she was hosting her own show, The Betty White Show. She started in television with Al Jarvis, co-starring in Hollywood on Television. At the same time, in 1951, she starred in Life with Elizabeth, when she went on to win her first Emmy. In the book, Betty also talks about the Mary Tyler Moore Show and Golden Girls. She discusses her romance and marriage with Alan Ludden and friendships with many stars like Mary Tyler Moore. There is no gossip, and she has few bad things to say about anybody except a nurse who was gushing over her and asking for her autograph while Betty was with Alan at his bedside at the hospital. One moment. This book is a light and cheerful look at Betty's life. Betty had a hugely successful and prolific career, a perpetually rosy outlook, and gives us a wonderful story about living and working through the golden age of television. This book ends with her announcing the start of her new TV show with Marie Osmond called Maybe This Time. All right, and my next book. Douglas is a man who died twice. He is the former husband of Elizabeth. Both worked for the MI5 as spies. Elizabeth lives in Cooper's Chase, a retirement community in Kent, England, with her Thursday Murder Club friends. Abraham, a retired psychiatrist. Ron, a committed union. Sorry, guys. And Joyce, a retired nurse who is knitting friendship bracelets to sell to friends to raise money for charity. Douglas has stolen 20 million pounds worth of diamonds and angered several prominent crime bosses, including the New York Mafia. He wants Elizabeth to hide him. As the crime bosses seek their diamonds, bodies start piling up. Elizabeth enlists Joyce, Abraham, and Ron in the hunt for the ruthless murderers. In the second book of this series, they are up against enemies who wouldn't bat an eyelid at knocking off four 70-year-olds. Can the Thursday Murder Club find the killers and the diamonds before the killers find them? This is altogether a great read with an intriguing mystery, lots of humor, delightful characters, and a perfect ending. If I ever have to move to a retirement village, I want to go to Cooper's Chase. And my last book. Sea Harbor Art Colony is hosting a week-long photography event. Izzy's husband, Sam, was asked to invite one of his mentors, Harrison Grant, to be the keynote speaker. The man arrives for the opening ceremony, but when it's time for his speech, the photographer is nowhere to be found. The next morning on her run, Izzy finds Mr. Grant, but he won't be giving any lectures. Dead men tell no tales. But knowing there's a murderer in the vicinity, Izzy, Bertie, Cass, and Nell, the seaside knitters, find themselves faced with another mystery. They are knitting together the clues. They are knitting together the clues while also knitting caps and booties for a community baby shower and for the bundle of joy that Cass will soon be delivering. The author has created a cast of characters diverse in age and experience. She has a lovely writing style that draws her readers into the story and makes them feel like they are wrapped up in a warm, cozy blanket on a cold winter's night. Okay, sorry for the coughing. Next up, we have Sherry.
Hello there, I'm Sherry Remington. I'm the manager at the Saks branch, and I'm going to tell you about 3 books and then talk about Warm Up America and the library's involvement in it. The first book that I selected is called Simple Knitting, and it's a complete how-to workshop with 20 projects by Erica Knight. I selected this book because it has a very concise and usable presentation of the information, and a learner can potentially use this book to get outfitted, learn the basics, and try out 20 progressively more complex projects. There are illustrations, photographs, patterns, and charts. It's got a section with materials and techniques. It shows you how to choose yarn, how to get your equipment. I mean, even things that you might not think that you would need, such as pencil, paper, measuring tape, calculator, and things like that. So it really thinks of every possibility that you might need. It teaches you how to hold the yarn and the needles, starting with making a slip knot. Casting on, you learn to knit, to purl. You learn to increase, decrease, bind off. You learn to knit in the round, and there's a section of terminology, abbreviations, and it tells you how to seam things together if you're sewing something together, how to troubleshoot, because sometimes problems will crop up. It's got a stitch library also, so you can look through there and see little 4-inch square samples of how a stitch will look, like a seed stitch, or, you know, this is garter stitch, this is stockinette stitch, this basket weave, you know, just all the different potential stitches that you might use. And then it's got 20 projects. The first project in this book is, she calls it a muffler. It's a scarf. It's sort of a traditional beginning project for a new knitter. So you start there and you go through and you learn all sorts of different skills. They even work with colors. There's a tea cozy in there where you knit colors into it so it looks like it's got flowers on the side. And then the final project, you can see it on the cover of the book, there is a V-neck sweater, which you would learn to make and fit to yourself. So my pick out of this book, and I would say that I've been knitting for a pretty long time, but I'm not a very advanced knitter. I kind of just stay in my lane, and I would call myself an intermediate knitter. But the project in this book that really kind of fascinated me is knitting a bag that's made out of yarn you make yourself out of fabric. So in other words, you might take an old shirt that instead of putting it in the rag bag, you cut it in a certain way to make yourself a ball of yarn, and then you knit yourself a bag from it. All right, and so that brings me to book number 2. I liked the knitting book so well that I decided to take a look at the How to Crochet book by the same author, and I liked it just as well. It's simple crocheting, and it's also got 20 projects in there. It's got all the charts. It shows you about the different yarns and how to use them, and the different crochet hooks and different tools that you would need. It goes through the different stitches that you make, and it's got swatches in a stitch library. One of the things that I particularly liked about this is that it teaches you how to count stitches, because even though I've been doing crochet for as long as I've been doing knitting, and about as complex, you know, kind of medium to on the basic side, sometimes counting the stitches and understanding if I'm in the right place to begin the next row is I find it challenging. So I liked that this book really showed you, you know, you count this stitch, you don't count this stitch, you know, when you're starting the next row. So I found that very helpful, even as somebody who's been doing it for a while. It's got projects in there beginning with something really simple, a dishcloth, which I would say is like a little square short muffler. You can do pillow covers, textured throws, there are wrist warmers, there's a snood, even crochet a fine fiber necklace. You can make a tablecloth, table mats, and a little area rug, which I thought was neat because she uses the same idea in this book that she did in the other one, where you make your own yarn out of fabric by cutting up fabric in a certain way and rolling it into a ball and using it as yarn. She's got 2 projects in this book to use that way, and I would like to try them. One is to crochet a little area rug, and then the second one is to crochet a really cute little pet bed, you know, something that a small dog like a Yorkie or a cat would fit in. So I thought that was cute, and that would be the thing that I would try. The third book that I chose, because it kind of leads into the topic of Warm Up America, is Knit Along with Debbie Maycumber, and it's a charity guide for knitters. I would say that the patterns in here range from intermediate to more skilled, and some of them I think are beyond my skill, but they are all based on charity organizations that she located who have a focus in different areas of the community to benefit different areas of the community. So she's got 14 different charities listed in here, and some examples are Binky Patrol, and this is to knit for children who are experiencing trauma. There are Newborns in Need, and there's Operation Helmet Liner, which is where you knit kind of a balaclava thing that would go over a soldier's head, and then the helmet goes on top. The Linus Project for ill and traumatized children, and Snuggles Project, which is for making squares for shelter animals, and then Warm Up America, and many more. But there are some great ideas and patterns that are geared toward these different charities. So that kind of brings me to Warm Up America. And in case you're not familiar with it, Warm Up America is more of a technique or a way to be able to combine the efforts of many people to give items that are needed to local charities. So sometimes you think Warm Up America, oh, it's a national thing. Oh, you would make this stuff. Oh, you would send it to somewhere in Texas or wherever their headquarters is, and then they will take care of getting it out into the world. But that's not really how it was founded. The way it started was that the person who founded it wanted a way for anyone, no matter how small an amount of time or no matter how small the amount of materials they had, could make a contribution that would be included and could be all added together with other people's contributions into bigger items. So what you do is you start off with knitting or crocheting a square that is 7 inches by 9 inches. And if everybody makes their squares that size and donates them somewhere where people will put them together, then they can be sewn together into whole afghans and then given out into the community. And it all can be done locally. Well, the library got involved with this back in 2008. We had knitting and crochet groups kind of scattered across our 20 branches. And the groups crocheted and knitted the squares, and the people in their knit crochet groups knitted the squares, and they stitched them together, and they came up with 52 afghans that first year that they were involved. So they called up and invited a few different local charities from the area to come to the branch, to headquarters, I think is where the first one was held, where they donated these 52 afghans to the local charities. And the local charities talked about how they would use these, or what use they'd be put to. So that was very nice. The next year, we had 220 items completed. Over the years, we've done more and more and more each year. Our highest year of items donated was 3,200 items. Although now with the pandemic, it's kind of scaled back, and we have not done as much the last couple of years, but I have to say it's been a small and mighty crew that has done this, because there have been one or two people knitting and crocheting squares. There's one woman who organizes them into Afghans. There's another woman who sews them together and puts a border around them. And then a person who takes them out and donates them locally. So last year we did 180 items. You know, we got kind of off to a slow start, and then we got into a rhythm, and or I guess that was 2020, was 180 items. And then last year in 2021, we did 692 items. And this year already, we have had such an outpouring. It's really touching to me. Just could make me tear up. We already have 153 items, and they've gone out into the community to places like the Annie Malone Children's Home, St. Vincent de Paul Home for Children. We've taken them to Nurses for Newborns, St. Alphonsus the Rock Church. We made donations to Welcome Neighbors STL that assists refugees, and to like St. Anthony Food Pantry and places like that. So all told, since 2008, the library and its patrons and staff have donated 19,084 items to help people in the community. And it's a very, very worthwhile and rewarding thing to be involved with. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Thanks, Sherry. So yeah, we're gonna have a Q&A session in just a few minutes. Sarah, the other Sarah J, is gonna turn on the chat, and if you have any questions, you can put your chat there. So yeah, but before we have our Q&A, I just want to draw your attention to a couple of other library programs and initiatives that we have going on that you might be interested in. If you did not get enough reading suggestions tonight, you can try out our personalized reading service. This is where you fill out a form on our website and tell us what you like, and you'll receive a list of 5 titles created just for you based on the things that you tell us that you like. Also, here are a couple of virtual programs that we think you might enjoy. Next month, as many people know, is Black History Month, and we have a lot of really cool programs related to that. And here are 2 that I think you all might be interested in, given that you like to read and do sort of crafting, needle crafting. So we have an evening with the Kwansaba on Tuesday, February 17th at 7 p.m. This is the Kwansaba is an African-American poetic form. And so you'll find out all about that, and I think get to try it out yourselves. And then we have a crafting program, hand-sewn quilt blocks, on Thursday, February 24th at 7:00 p.m. And this is one where you will get to sew your own mini log cabin quilt square, and then also learn about the Gee's Bend African-American quilts, historical quilts. So yeah, 2 really great programs. I will have links to these in the follow-up email, but you can also find them on the library's events calendar. So yeah, let's have a little bit of a Q&A. These are the email addresses that you can email us if you have follow-up questions after the presentation. readersadvisory@slcl.org if you want to ask questions about like the winter reads, adult services if you want to ask a bit more about the crafting. Yeah, how about I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and if the other presenters want to turn on their cameras, we'll kind of go back into grid mode. We can keep our microphones off until we have an actual question, but let's go ahead and turn our cameras on.
So we do have a few questions, mostly pertaining to the work drop-offs. So Sherry, if you want to clarify where folks can turn those in.
Yes, Donations for Warm Up America can be brought to any SLCL branch. They do end up coming to my branch, which is Saks. So if you wanted to drop them off directly off there, that would be fine. But if it's easier for you to take them to somewhere else, then that is fine. The other branches know to direct things to me. And we accept not just squares, but we accept yarn, we accept completed other items, you know, or whole Afghans, lap Afghans, baby blankets. Since we donate to Nurses for Newborns and Newborns in Need, we can take any sort of children's clothing, as well as blankets, scarves, hats. Really, pretty much anything you can imagine that would warm up a person or warm up their life would be great.
Yeah, I think you just got a
And-
big donation, right? That had like hats and stuffies, like little stuffed animals and all sorts of stuff, right?
We did. I can't remember the exact number of items, but 2 weeks ago, we received, I mean, a huge amount of Afghans. I can't remember how much it was. And somebody made all these little tiny stuffies, and a lot of them had like a mother and a baby together. It was so cute. And they had little machine embroidered faces on them, but they had been made by somebody. I mean, I think there were like 200 of them. It was just phenomenal. I mean, I find myself getting teary-eyed all the time by this stuff that comes in. It just, and people just are so wonderful.
What's wonderful too is when we're back to in person, we can have the Warm Up America reception. And that I got the branch I was at before I was in this position. We hosted the last one with you, Sherry, and it was so powerful to have some of the organizations come in and tell us about how meaningful the items are to the people that receive them. So it is a very tear generating endeavor all the way around. And someone else wanted to clarify too, is something that they can donate year round, or is there a certain timeline that they need to be aware of?
No, it's all year. It's ongoing. We never stop. You know, even though it's not cold out, we're still working on things. We're still donating things. I have a former employee who is a member of St. Vincent de Paul Society, and he comes and grabs our things whenever they're ready, and he goes everywhere looking far and wide for organizations that can use them. And if it's a time of year where no one is in need of a certain thing, you know, like hats or whatever, then they'll hang on to them and wait until it's the right time, until the organizations are in need of them. And speaking of hats, I just have to say, there is a patron who is a headquarters patron most of the time. She knits hundreds of hats. They are just beautiful with colorful yarns, and sometimes they have little puff balls on top. I mean, they're just anybody would love to have these hats. And there's somebody else too who has been knitting these little soap bags. I didn't know about them, but they're a small thing. You can complete it very quickly. They put a bar of soap in it and it ties, and then this can be given to anyone in need. It's got soap and something to wash yourself with. So that's a big thing. That's I saw that on Warm Up America site, and then we received some.
I'm not sure that was kind of the bulk of our questions thus far, though someone did ask, and we answered them in the chat, but about how many donations we collected. And I think it's worth repeating, share, and I won't make you turn on your, well,
I can do it easy enough. Yes, I'm very happy to say that as of this week, the total of items that the St. Louis Library and its community have donated to local charities is 19,084 items. That is a lot of caring going on.
Absolutely. And use of time, because I know it was so nice to discover that this organization and these possibilities existed, because yeah, there's only so many Afghans you can make for yourself, for your relatives, for your, you know, your neighbors. So but yeah, we don't want to stop doing these things, but it's wonderful that there are ways to put our good talents to use. Yeah. Any any of the last questions, folks? You can still put those in the chat. It's very quiet. I think we may have answered most of their questions, at least for the time being.
Yeah, feel free to email us if you have any follow-up questions, especially if you want more information about the books, or you want more information about joining some of our upcoming craft challenges. Sarah's happy to let you know more about some of the ones that are coming up. So yeah, looks like that's it maybe. Oh, yeah, can you tell us one more time, Sarah, about where you access Creative Bug?
Yeah, absolutely. So Creative Bug you access it through each. So if you go to slcl.org and using the library tab, it's under e-courses, and it's the first thing that'll pop up under personalized learning, I believe. And we have a video. Like if you go to the previous 2 challenges in November and the daily lettering challenge or the daily embroidery challenge, I do walk through like how to access the Creative Bug with your library card. And so those steps are there. It tells you, like, I go through like how to get to the actual one we're concerned with at the time, but that's there, and it is literally hundreds of tutorial videos on all kinds of things to do with family. They just added some like house plant program since that's been so popular. During the early part of the pandemic, they had like a daily, like how to bring some cheer into your life, like little creative things to do while we were in the shutdown phase of things. So like it was like manicuring and using washi tape to like create some patterns on your nail. Like they're always there with something new and something surprising, and they do add new videos every month. And they are doing a quilting one, I think, right now. They're for the new daily challenge coming up. They're doing something with like how to use knit stitches and crochet as a new tutorial. They're going to be posting, I think February 22nd or something like that. So they have a little calendar. You can check out what's new and upcoming, but it's an easy rabbit hole to fall into once you get your account set up, and it's pretty easy to do so, to get the account sorted out. um, and they're really, like, I started off with using Creative Bug to in-person programs, facilitating drawing classes that I didn't necessarily feel comfortable telling people, like, this is how you draw. Like, why don't we let a professional show you, and I can help, like, with tips, you know, and specific questions that came up. And that was working really well for us at the branch I was at, before we stopped doing in-person programs. And so during the pandemic, we had the opportunity to do these month-long programs to give us something to do. I know the last 2 Januaries have been really helpful to have that daily practice to kind of help time pass, because January is always the roughest month for me. I don't do well in the winter, so so it's been great to learn something new, to have a creative, meditative activity that it was free to learn, and really super fun, to be honest. And the community we've built as through St. Louis County Library, we've got a little group of people we share. Everyone's invited to share on Instagram their progress if they want. And we've got a group of people, some of you here this evening, who post different projects you're working on, and as we work through the things. So that's been a nice byproduct of what we've done with Creative Bug. But please do look at the YouTube videos. I'm guessing Sarah's gonna probably add a link for that in the follow-up email, just so you can check out those steps if you like, or you can join us on March 1st too for the kickoff for the daily drawing challenge, which is the next one, and I'll be walking everyone through how to access Creative Bug in that program too.
Yeah, I will be sending a follow-up email. in the next couple days. It depends on when the video gets put up onto YouTube. So once it's up on YouTube, I'll send a follow-up video to all the attendees that has a link to this program on YouTube, the handout, the programs that we mentioned, Warm Up America, Creative Bug, one of the previous challenges. So yeah, it'll have lots of cool stuff in it. So yeah, I think we'll end it there. Thank you to everyone for presenting. Thank you to everyone for coming. And I hope that you get involved in Warm Up America, and we can have even more things that we've donated. So yeah, everyone have a great night, and thanks for attending Read One, Craft One, and we hope to see you at another virtual program soon. Good night, everyone.